anyone who join us, they can catch up. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening, and welcome to our workshop. So tonight we are looking at storytelling and captivating the audience. So I'm Hélène Pasquier. Some of you might have already seen me for our workshops that happened before the summer. And I work for the environment team at Norfolk County Council, and I focus especially on sustainable tourism. And one of the projects I'm working on is called Experience. I just wanted to let you know what the Experience project is about for the ones that haven't heard about the project already. So this project is really about to boost sustainable tourism in Norfolk, and we are really looking at off-season tourism, so especially during October and March. And we want to boost tourism by capitalizing on a growing trend, which is experiential tourism. So what is experiential tourism? Basically, there are more and more travelers that are looking for there are more and more travelers that are looking to live like a local, and they want to discover hidden places, hear local stories. They want to taste local foods and explore, activities and art in Norfolk. So that's really kind of the people we want to attract. Tonight, Chris Brand from Unmissable England will speak about how you can create a memorable experience for your visitors by using storytelling. And he will give you clear and practical steps on how you can achieve that. And I know that he has prepared a few activities to help you develop and planning your own story. So for those who haven't met Chris before, he is the director of Unmissable England. So it's a national tourism development and marketing organization, and he is specialized in developing experiential tourism. He was actually project manager for Visit England in 9 national parks, and he has developed and created over 70 brand new visitor experiences to take to market, as well as he has adapted 80 experiences to make them consumer ready. And I think recently, Chris, you have been working with Camden AONB, and you have developed more than 20 experiences. So Chris has quite a lot of experience, and we will have a kind of a Q&A session at the end. And really, just don't hesitate to pick his brain and ask him any questions. So I just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping before we start. So please make sure you keep your microphone muted at all times during the workshop, unless obviously you want to ask a question to Chris during the Q&A session. Also, if you could make sure you could show your full name on the screen, it helps us to know who attends. If it's not working, actually, you could go next to the name on the video, and there's a more button, and you just click on that, and you can then change your name. Another thing, I can see a few people have the videos. Yes, please keep your videos on. It's really, really nice to see you. Unfortunately, we are not face-to-face yet, but hopefully soon. So please leave your video on if you can. Obviously, if you're not comfortable or if you have connection issues, then that might be able, that might help to turn the video off. Another thing, don't hesitate to use the chat. You know, that's a really good way to ask us any question, to ask Chris any questions. It's also a good opportunity to introduce yourselves to us and the other participants, and maybe tell us a little bit more about, you know, the kind of experiential activities that you might already be doing, or any ideas of activities that you would want to do. You know, we really want to support each other here, so don't hesitate to write something. Another thing is that a copy of the presentation and the next steps will be circulated tomorrow or maybe early next week. And finally, regarding the recording, so we only record the main presentation. Your image and your name or anything you write in the chat will not be recorded. So you might see a message at the bottom of the screen saying that you can save the chat, but we actually have disabled this feature. So yes. So for the next slide, so I wanted, before we start, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the kind of the new wave of training that we are starting today. So before the summer, we had training on what experiential tourism is and how to develop a visitor experience. For those who haven't attended those sessions, actually they've been recorded and they are available on our YouTube channel. So I think my colleague Stuart is going to pop the link towards the YouTube channel in the chat. So yes, so if you haven't been able to attend the session, they've been recorded, so you can check them out. We have worked really closely with Chris to be able to present kind of a new series of training. So it starts tonight. And so with this workshop on storytelling. And then there are more sessions planned for 2022, basically. So we have a distribution and target markets, marketing and social media, promoting your experience, sustainable tourism, how to be more accessible and more inclusive, because we know that it can attract more visitors, and also how to attract walkers and cyclists. So we are currently finalizing the kind of calendar for those training, and if you want to be in the loop to be aware of the next dates, please sign up to our Norfolk newsletter. So you can see on the screen, and I think Stuart will put the link as well in the chat. But there's the link to register to the newsletter. But again, it will be in our email, in our recap email. So that's this one. What else did I wanted to tell you? Yes, I wanted to tell you that we are also planning with Chris to do some networking events, and we are really aiming to have them face to face. So that will be in 2022, hopefully in the first quarter. And yes, it will be a good opportunity to meet you properly, and hopefully to meet some fellow businesses and organizations. In addition to those events, we have also created the Norfolk Experiences Facebook group, where you can meet and collaborate with businesses. We've just opened it, so please join the group. It's really good. Chris keeps an eye on it. So if you have any questions for Chris or any questions for us, if you want to share some information with other businesses, that's a good place to share information. So that's it for me. Chris, I let you start your presentation or your workshop.
Thanks very much, Helen, and thank you to you and to the team at Norfolk County Council for inviting me here this evening to give this presentation on storytelling within your experiences. It's great to be here again and good to see you all this evening. Welcome. I'm not actually in a bar. I'm just got a jazzy background just to so it's a bit more visual when watching the presentation. So tonight there's lots coming up. We're going to be looking at the power of storytelling within your experiences. We're going to be looking at how you can research your story for your experience and develop that story, and some real key takeaways for you to actually delve down into those stories, and also how you can continue to evolve your story, because once you've created your story for your experience, it doesn't just stop there, it continues, and we'll give you some top tips on that. And as Helen was saying, there's lots of time for questions and answers as well at the end of the workshop. But throughout the session this evening, there's going to be some practical guidance and some activities as well. So it's not a webinar, it is a workshop, and that's one of the reasons why we love to see your faces on the camera, so we can really connect with you guys and really use the time, use the time effectively, because there are activities and we want to hear from you. There's times throughout the session this evening where we get you to do some of our activities, and we want to be able to hear from you as well. So it's an interactive session because we want you to learn lots and lots and take lots away for your own experiences as well. So that's what's coming up this evening. So what is storytelling? Well, in this workshop, we're looking at very much storytelling being the storytelling which you do in your experience. So we're not looking at it as a separate activity. We're looking at it as being the experience of being of actually telling a story through your whole experience. So storytelling, as we all know, it really forges a connection between different people. So this is why it's a fundamental part in any visitor experience, because experiences are about people. It's about people's stories, their ideas, and how that excuse me and how that all connects with the local history, art, culture and communities. So it's really key, as I say, to have storytelling intertwined into your experience. And it's a powerful tool, because it was once the norm that we went on holiday and we would take part in different tours and activities and visited a place. But these days, more and more guests and visitors from around the world are looking for experiences that they can really engage with the people and the place on an emotional level. And that's what storytelling can really do, and that's why it's powerful. So we find more and more tourism businesses want to share their stories, but particularly they want their stories to be told by the visitors when they get home. So once someone's got home from their holiday or their trip, they want to really know and feel connected to the place that they visited on an emotional level. So they want to share on Facebook and Instagram, but also with their friends and family, which is great PR when, if you want more bookings on your experiences. So it's that emotional connection with you and your guests. And we're seeing that more and more with experiences in the UK, also around the world. So it's important to think about the power of storytelling through your experience. So can you host an experience without storytelling being involved? No, not really. Storytelling is that kind of, as I say, it's really a fundamental part of experiences, and conveying and interpreting the story really connects the guests, and it's very much around about shared experiences as well. So your experience of something that you're passing through your visitor experience onto your visitors, telling the stories of characters and people and your unique stories through your experiences is really intertwined. So a good experience will always include storytelling, and that's why we've got the workshop here this evening. So how you tell your story is really important. So the best way to do your, to actually prepare your story is actually to practice it and to find your own voice. So it's very much this is your voice, your story. So you're not passing on a story that you've heard from somebody else. You might have bits of your story that you're passing on from different people that you've met in your life, or in your particular place where you're delivering your experience. But this is very much your voice, your story. And we all have stories to tell. It's just that some of us feel that sometimes the stories that we have, we might think that our guests might not be interested in hearing about. And actually this evening, what we're going to be looking at is some real practical things and techniques you can actually do to actually think, actually, I do have all these different stories and these bits and pieces and bits of information I would like to share, and actually bring that together into one unique story that you can share with your experiences. So we all have stories to share. We all have our own life experiences, and it's how we can feed that into our own individual experiences. And let me tell you a bit more about my own experience, or my experiences. If anybody's joined these workshops before, they will know that I run experiences myself. I'm an experience maker or experience provider, and I live in Oxfordshire in the Cotswolds. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I developed my own story, my own experience, and that was making scones, baking scones, should I say, in a Cotswold cottage. So this is an experience that I run, as I say, 4 or 5 years now. It retails at £64 per person. I take 4 to 5 people on this experience, and they step inside a thatched cottage, my privately owned, my house, on the edge of the Cotswolds, and we make scones. But it's much more than just baking those scones. And as I tell you now, it's the story that I've includes these following sections. So there's our cottage, and that's where it takes place, inside the cottage. Now, the cottage, we've been living there 7 years, and in that time we have been restoring it, but we've also been looking at the history. So I've done all the ancestry going back to 1849. So I know exactly who's lived in these cottages. It's actually 2 cottages that's been knocked through, and it's got a farming and rural connection. And I've gone back to all the different families that have lived in the cottage as well. So I can share that story about all the heritage of the building and the ancestry of that building as well. So, as I said, we've also restored it. We've been here 7 years. The first year, the thatch actually fell in, and we had to restore the whole thatch. So I learnt loads about thatching and about how expensive it is. But I can share that story on about, the traditional art of thatching, and actually that it's 2.5 meters thick from the top of the thatch right through to the ceiling, which is really heavy. Maybe one of the reasons why it actually collapsed. But it's a 15th century cottage, so it's super old. So I can share all those different stories and the different renovation work and restoration work that we've done to bring it back to life. And obviously, we're making scones, we're baking the scones, which is actually an old family recipe. So it links there back to me, about my family. It's my nan's old recipe. I put that down on a recipe card, and I show my guests how to make the scones. Now, I don't pretend to be a chef or a baker. I'm a home baker, and I enjoy baking. So you don't necessarily need to be an expert. Again, these are the scones that my nan used to make. I'm sharing the recipe in the cottage where I live. And that's okay. There are some experiences where you do need to be an expert. For example, if you're doing foraging or something, then it's probably wise to have a qualification in that type of field of activity. But if your experience is a bit like mine, that's absolutely fine. You can pass on your shared learning experience in your own experience. So as well as the scones, there's also an activity where we do a guided walk around the village, visiting a 13th century church, and I give all the history and heritage about the village as well. So the cottage is the setting, it's the village is the setting as well, and there's also remains of an old castle, and that castle dates back around about the 14th century as well, and it's got links back to Oliver Cromwell and James I. So some big characters there, some big history, which works really well for the international guests, especially the North Americans. They love those links to the royal family and Oliver Cromwell and all those different things as well. So I can feed that into my experience. So it's the history, the heritage, the restoration. Of course, it's the scone making. It's the links to the village and the big history. And that's very much my story, as well as enjoying the cream tea that the guests get to make themselves. So it's much more than just a cooking experience. It's that whole story. So tonight we've got 5 stages of that process of storytelling that I'm going to be sharing with you. And first we're going to look at the research element of how you actually start and begin to research your experiences. So first of all, you need to have a plan. You need to plan out your experience and you need to be prepared, but you don't want to be too prepared because you don't want to get let your preparation get in the way of a really good story. So give yourself an outline. So as I've just shown you there, I haven't gone in the detail of the story. I'm just giving you the kind of the outline of my story, the context of the story. So give yourself that outline and stick to it, but allow yourself some wriggle room, because sometimes, you know, you're always going to have different types of guests, different types of people, and your guests are going to ask, you know, they're going to respond and ask you different questions. So you need to be prepared and to be flexible with that as well, and be prepared to have those questions asked as well. You also need to make sure that you've planned in, you know, a change in your story or adapting your story if you're feeling that your guests are possibly losing interest. In every journey, you want to get from A to B. So sometimes going off the beaten track or taking a shortcut can make it even more worthwhile. So actually, it's okay to have your A, B, and C, but don't worry about you going off the beaten track and actually taking a shortcut or even a long cut and actually adding more into your story, because you're meeting your guests' needs and what they're looking for within the experience. So having a plan is great. Map it out, think about the different elements of your story, but be prepared to, you know, go off that beaten track sometimes, just to add more in your experience, because this is not a script. You're not acting, you're not reading out information. This is very much coming from your passion and from your personality of what you really enjoy and what's special about your experience. And like every story, it has a start, middle, end. And we really encourage you, when you're planning out your story, to make sure you have a start and end particularly. Storytelling is not just about keeping your audience engaged, but it's very much about making your guests feel easy, feel for them, it's easy for them to share your story. So what you want to do is, when your guests get home from their holiday or for their day out or their trip, you want them to talk about your experience and the story, so they can easily pass on that story. So make sure you start at the beginning of your story and end at the end. Storytelling is very much the first communication when you have your guests. So we talk very much about storytelling already in your marketing. Your story begins on your Facebook post, on your Airbnb listing, these different things. It needs to be right up there. It's not something you begin, you know, half an hour into your experience. It starts in your marketing. It's already begun when you're talking to your guests on booking, when they've got any inquiries. Your storytelling is very fundamental throughout the whole journey of your customer. So once you get your experience has started and guests have arrived, don't wait for the story to begin. You know, it has already begun. So if you've just crossed that amazing bridge with that amazing view, and then you go and say, right, the story is going to begin here. Well, you've actually missed the start of your story, because your story started actually within your marketing, and especially that first interaction with guests when you physically meet them at the start of the experience. So if you have that in your head, and you can deliver your experience throughout that. So make sure you start your experience on a high, give closure to your story at the end as well, and make sure you're always listening to your guests and also watching their responses and their interactions throughout the experience as well, to make sure they're fully engaged throughout. So it comes on, we're going to come on to our first activity this evening. As I said, it's very much a hands-on activity workshop this evening. There's 3 different activities for you to join in. Stuart has already posted in our chat window a link to our worksheet. So we've got an interactive worksheet we would like you to to click on the link and to open it, and that will open as a Word document. So you can open that Word document onto your screens, and you can follow the exercises within that worksheet as well. So our first activity, as I said, it's very much about planning your experience, and we're looking at how you can plan and deliver your story. So we've got an example of Be a Farmer for the day. And on this experience, our guests get to milk a cow, you get to show a map to your guests, you introduce the guests to a group of beavers that have been recently reintroduced, you get to enjoy coffee and cake with a big open view, you get to monitor butterflies on a 30-minute walk, and you also get to enjoy a homemade lunch inside a barn. All of that on a farm, being very much a farmer for the day. And what we would like you to do in this exercise is imagine you're delivering that experience, and we want you to use the chart to plot out that journey of that experience. So imagine you're delivering it. Think back to those high points as well. So as we see in the graph there, we're looking, it's all very exciting. It's a great experience, but there's some peaks within the story that are really going to spark interest. It's a really fun, engaging activity. So we're looking for that start, middle, and end to have those highs. So you want to be able to plot them out. So when you open up your worksheet in the first part of the activity, you'll see what you see within the presentation right now, but you'll see some colored dots, and you can click on those dots and move those dots onto the white line. Now, there's no wrong or right answer with this exercise. This is purely to get you guys to think about how you can deliver your story. There's also some practicalities as well when delivering an experience, so you might want to pop those into your head as well. Obviously, it's great to have lunch at lunchtime. So think about that. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do this exercise, and then it'd be great to hear from one or two of you this evening just about how you've plotted out your experience of Be a Farmer for the day. So moving on, we've started looking at the research, but very much what we're going to look at now is the development stages of how you develop your story. So it's all about the ingredients, the who, what, when, and where. So in this section, we're looking at who's involved, what's happened, when was it, and where did it take place. So all the fundamental things when you write any type of story, your guests will want to know all those W's there on the screen. They also want to know the how and the why. So how did something happen and why did it happen? So these are good questions to ask yourself to make sure that you're answering them with whatever your story might be. Because these are the things that your guests, so you're kind of very much prepared what your guests are thinking in their head and what the answers they're looking for. So in our next exercise, our activity 2, we're going to be looking at the who, the what, the when, and the where. Just to give you some context to this, so I'm going to give you another example. Well, I'm going to give you the same example actually of that Be a Farmer for the day, of how we would complete this exercise. So in this one, it's very much who's involved. Well, if I'm the farmer, it's me, the farmer. It's my neighbour farmer who I'm going to get you to introduce. I'm going to introduce you to my farmer because they're really interesting, and they've been farming here for a long time. We're also going to meet the beavers, so I'm engaging with the local wildlife ranger. So this is just an example, and hopefully you'll be able to think about this yourselves in the activity when we come into it in a moment. So who's involved? What's actually happened? Well, I'm running a small farm. I'm moving to more organic methods. So a bit of kind of, I've got the history of the farm, but also got what's going on the farm now and what I've done as well. So I'm sharing my passion for organic farming. I'm thinking about, the future of the farm. And I've also been involved with the rewilding project. So to bring the beavers back and also to increase butterflies as well on the farm with the organic farming. So that's kind of the story, the context of what's happened. Well, where has it happened? when was it happening? Well, the last 25 years I've been a farmer. The farm's here been here around 200 years, and the beavers have recently been reintroduced in the area as well. So that gives you the context of when and where. Well, obviously on the farm, obviously connected to the rural village, and also that if it's beavers, then there's obviously going to be a river. So that gives you the structure of how the story should take place, and the who, the what, when and where. And what we would like you to do now, using the same worksheet, you'll find, if you scroll down into activity 2, you'll see this slide, and then there, underneath that, you'll see those questions of the who's involved and etc. We're going to give you 10 minutes on this activity, so you can apply it to your own experience, your own idea of your experience. And if you haven't got an experience that you run already, just think about the story that you might have. And what I should have said earlier on is that we're really keen to hear the stories that you have for your experiences. So you can use this time as well to pop that into the chat window, because we'd love to hear the stories that you have got to share within your experiences. As well as using the activity in the worksheet, we would like you to kind of address the questions of the who, what and when, and then we'll come and open the floor up again, and we'll hear from hopefully a few of you this evening on how you'll deliver that story. So as I said, about 10-15 minutes on this exercise, and if you've got any questions, please unmute your microphone. I'm here to answer those questions for you this evening. So I'll give you some time to ponder away with your thoughts of your story. To the structures of storytelling, and there's various different structures out there when developing any type of story. Here we're to see some of the main ones, the main structures that are out there that you can use. First of all, the hero's journey. This is when you take an audience on a journey, demonstrating what you have learnt and some newfound wisdom. So this is very much the kind of experience, the story that I tell as a baker, doing baking scones, as restoring the cottage, and finding out all about the ancestry. So I'm sharing my wisdom and my knowledge and my information, and taking guests on that story. So that's a hero's journey. Nested loops is a story structure that is found in many folk tales and myths and legends as well. So it explains the process of how you were inspired or came to a certain conclusion. Sparklines is inspiring the audience to take action and creating hope and lots of excitement in your story. A mountain says what it does on the tin. Basically, it's a structure of mapping out tension and drama with your guests. It's similar to the hero's story, but because it helps to plot certain different events in your story, you're trying to build that tension throughout, and then deliver that really exciting announcement in your story at the peak. So it has that satisfying conclusion as you come back down off the mountain ridge as well. In medias res is when you actually start right bang in the middle of your story, right in the heat of the moment, before starting all over again to actually explain how you got there in the middle. So you're grabbing your attention, grabbing the attention of your guests right from the start, and you're keeping that audience craving for more on the outcome as well. And finally, petal is when you've got a series of different elements to your story with a central theme, and you're demonstrating different strands of your story in order to process the interconnected stories. So, and then it all comes together as well. They are just some of the top kind of most used structures in storytelling. You'll find many more on the internet, so do please have a Google of those different story techniques and structures, because they will help you to really focus on the type of structure you want to give your story. So we're going to move on to our next phase of developing the story. We're going to move across from develop into deliver. We're going to ignore promotion at the moment because we've got a separate workshop on just promotion. And as I said earlier on, storytelling isn't just about delivering that in your experience. It's actually about having storytelling in your marketing and how you communicate. So we're going to cover that in a workshop itself later early next year. So we're moving across to how you actually deliver your experience and your story. So first of all, know your guests, because it's really important, first of all, to get to know your guests, and it's good to get to know them actually on booking. So way before they actually visit you and come and do your experience, you want to know as much about them as possible. So you want to be able to ask them a couple of questions once they've booked. So you've got an understanding about what they're doing, what their aspirations might be, and what they might be doing in their trip. And that will really help you with that knowledge to actually know a bit more about your guests, so you can be prepared. So your connection with your guests will already started basically before you've met them, because you've got that interaction, that connection with them at the beginning. So when you do actually meet them on the experience, continue in asking them questions, but don't overwhelm them. You don't want to ask them too many questions. You don't want to scare them, obviously. After all, this is not going to be an interview. You want to observe them. You want to watch how they interact with each other and with the other guests, and with yourself as well. Now, guests will have questions, but they might not always be prepared to ask you the question. Because they might feel that they might interfere with the story, or interfere in the time that you've got to do your experience. But guests, they will have questions, and they'll be thinking of these different questions in their head, but they might come and ask you a question. Now, you've got to be prepared to actually have time in your experience to come back to their questions and actually answer those questions as well. So knowing your guests, really key when you're developing and delivering that story, as well as communication. Now, communication obviously is important because you want your guests to feel connected with you. You want your guests to share your story once they get home as well. So you want to slowly build any tension in your experience. So, good tension, I'm not talking about nervous tension. You want to build that excitement, introducing the different characters that they might meet during the experience. Remember to continue to listen to your guests, and remember, if English isn't their first language, you might need to explain things or talk slightly slowly to actually make sure that they are understanding everything. Use clear diction, and don't be afraid to be silent, as I was earlier on, to emphasize and reflect on any elements of your story. So if you've got a big, exciting announcement to say in your story, or a big pivotal moment, then leave those moments to actually have that silence to be able to reflect. Use your body language, eye contact, and also dramatic gestures. I do this often, and to add that real emotional connection with your and engagement with your guests as well, and continuing to interact throughout the whole experience with your guests to make sure they feel at ease, but also connected to your story as well, by answering any questions and any kind of keeping an eye on them throughout the experience. Now, our third and final activity tonight. So this is Adam we've got on our screen. Adam's from France, and he's booked your experience. And Adam, he's keen to do your experience, but question for you is, how do you want Adam to feel once he's done your experience? Because it's really important to think ahead of how you want your guests to feel once they've done your experience. So do you want them to be inspired? Do you want them to be enriched? Do you want them to feel a sense of calm? Because maybe your experience is meditation and forest bathing and yoga. So therefore you don't want them to feel shocked or surprised. You want them to feel really calm and relaxed, and maybe having that sense of feeling alone. So it really is dependent on the type of experience and the stories that you're telling. But we would like you now there's going to be a link coming up in the chat window. We're using something called Slido, so you can actually vote. We want you to pick 2 of the following emotions on the screen, also in the poll, of how you would like guests to feel on your experience. So I'm going to flip over to the this chart now and actually. So more practical techniques for you to take away this evening. Storytelling, as I say, it's about having a dialogue with your guests, where most of the time you'll be doing most of the speaking. So like me tonight, I'm doing lots of the talking. But even if your guests aren't speaking or commenting back, they will be in their heads. So we all have shared life experiences. Therefore, you don't need to spend 5 minutes explaining detailed information for your guests that something they might simply understand. So don't go overboard with too much information and overwhelm them. So, you know, we all have a shared understanding of many different things. So, you know, don't go too much detail about something in particular, because if they do need to ask questions, often they will, and you can give them that time to do that as well. Humour. You don't necessarily need to be funny. Now, you might be a bit of a comedian, a bit like me, or think I am, maybe, no, I'm not. But don't feel pressured to actually to be funny in your experience. If you don't find yourself funny, then your guests most likely are not going to find yourself funny. So don't feel that pressure to be funny unless you feel you have a really good connection with your guests and you want to make them laugh, but it's not a requirement. Name names. Now, don't feel embarrassed to name people's names and to introduce them. That sounds quite obvious. From my own experience of helping businesses all over the country, I've worked with different individuals and businesses, and they've often bumped into somebody on their experience. And it's a really awkward, embarrassed moment where they're like, oh, that's Nigel. Nigel lives next door to me. It's like your guests want to feel like a local. They want to feel like they're you. So if you bump into Nigel, your next door neighbours, introduce Nigel, you know, and say, hi, this is Nigel next door, and he'll be like, hi. That's great. So include naming names of people that will come into your experience, because these are your characters. Don't leave names out. So, for example, if Mrs. Brown down the road makes really good cakes and was born and bred in the village, don't leave her name out. Call her Mrs. Brown. But don't be surprised that guests will actually start using Mrs. Brown and saying, oh, how long did Mrs. Brown live in the village for? Because they'll remember, because you're creating those characters. So name names. Avoid difficult subjects. So anything political or anything like that, it's good to steer away unless they're necessarily important and real, you know, fundamental to the storyline of your experience. So don't try and alienate your guests or offend your guests by pushing on your point of view directly to them. It can be difficult, especially the longer your experience is. You might have a very small group of 3 or 4 people, and you might be all day with them. And over lunch or dinner, even a glass of wine, you might be, you know, hearing more about them, their lives, and their political views and different things like that. And sometimes it can be really difficult just to remember, you know, they might feel like friends, and that's a really great feeling for them to feel. But remember, they're paying guests as well, so you have to really keep that balance and avoid those difficult subject areas. That brings us back to our final area of the development structure of creating your storytelling, and that's evolving your story. Because like all good stories, your stories should be able to continue to evolve. So we really recommend you to go out and actually practice your experience. Get going and actually start delivering your experiences. Even if you haven't got your storyline completely ready and you feel it's not complete yet, that's fine. Go out, start delivering your story within your experience, and what you will see is that it will evolve, and your guests will start giving you ideas and ask you questions and saying, you know, how long was that, or where did that happen? And you think, oh, I haven't included that part. And actually you can evolve that and add it to your story. So get out there and deliver your experience, and you'll see that they will naturally evolve over time. Now, every guest, every group is different, and if you're already doing this, you will know that. But one of the things we say at this point is actually some of these rules and techniques can and should be broken. So if you find yourself, making a joke because you really have that great connection with your guests, well, that's very natural. So don't steer away from from humor, because that's actually, it's an emotion and it's a connection that you have with your guests. So all these techniques, it's very much dependent on the types of people that you get on your groups and your experiences. Think about that and actually be able to adjust as well. So if you have a very quiet group, it might be that you will have to be a bit louder and make them excited and get them involved and actually connect them and enrich their experience a little bit more, because you want to connect with them. So there are the techniques there, but sometimes, with the different groups and different guests, you might have to adjust that over time. So they're the different techniques. As I say, we want you to go away, we want you to continue researching and developing your experiences. We'll come back in a separate workshop where we'll spend more time looking at the promotional and the marketing of your story to guests to get them to book. So please look out for that, details of that workshop as well. But you'll also find in your worksheet, you'll find our homework. There's a bit of homework for you to do. Don't worry, you don't have to do it tonight. You can do this at a later stage. We want you to use this storyboard to actually plot out your experience. So this is where you put those who, whats and whens and those different activities as well. So if you like we're hearing about milking the cow and all those different things, you'll put this into these different boxes and put some context to that and the story about that exercise and that activity. So it's a bit of homework for you to do because it will really help you in order to deliver your experience.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Yes, thank you everyone for engaging tonight, and I really would like to hear about the others. So just to have maybe just a line in the chat about what experiences you're working on about it. Okay. Yes. So I just wanted to let you know that we are looking for a sustainable off-season, so experiences that are happening during October and March especially, but obviously your experience can happen all year round. But we're really interested in this project about experiences that we can do during the winter. And if you are already running an experience, or if you have an idea and you want some specific support, just really contact us at experience@norfolk.gov.uk. We've got an activity form that we can help you to fill in or fill in with you. And we will write a follow-up email with all the links and everything. But yeah, just really don't hesitate to contact us. Yeah, I think Lynn and Catherine, there's definitely a potential to work with you, so would be really lovely. So that's it. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that we are building a new tourism website, and we will promote sustainable experiences in Norfolk. So on this website, we will have free experiences, and paid for experiences. So the paid for are potentially more yours, and the free ones are more experiences that my colleague Stuart actually has worked a lot on, any walks or any tours that we have in Norfolk, any really beautiful heritage that you can go and visit. So for the visitors, it will be a really a website showcasing the best that Norfolk has to offer during the off-season. So this website will be our main marketing tool, and we really want to use it as an inspiration for people to prepare their trip. And also we want people to be able to make their own itinerary. So they will be able to say, okay, so in the morning I want to go to see Lynn and do some chocolate tasting, and in the afternoon I will go to have a tour of the farm with Catherine. You know, this kind of things basically. So we are really hoping to have it up and running, so this website, to have it up and running by the summer, so to prepare the next off season. In parallel, we are working with different organizations to try and offer as much marketing opportunities for your experiences as possible. So again, you can contact us right now, and we'll do our best to find some marketing opportunities. If you're interested with the wider project, we have a website with a wider project, but the real website with the activities is, as I said, ongoing. One more thing I wanted to let you know before we go is to fill a feedback form. So we're really trying to improve trainings and networking events. So if you write a feedback form for us, that will be really fantastic, so we can improve everything. One thing I haven't mentioned is in terms of helping you to develop activities, we have a team of facilitators to help you. So Stuart is one of them, I'm one of them. Obviously, we have the expertise of Chris here. So we would be really delighted to, you know, to have a more one-to-one support with you, to, you know, to go to visit you or to have you on the phone and help you to develop your experience. So yes, that's it for tonight. If you have any other questions for us, please just send us an email. And yes, I think that's it. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate for everyone to come, and looking forward to hear more about your experiences. So thank you very much.
Thanks everybody. Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you for coming.